Alright, so just in case you don't know, in order to remove this slide, it's basically a matter of just backing this hand wheel all the way back, and then the thread disengages and you can just pull this thing off. The reason I'm wiggling it is because these are still adjusted and I haven't loosened them. And there's that little thing that wasn't supposed to fall out. And so what you have is, you do have this center bolt, and you can see right here that it goes right across the top. Now let me gently set this down, and I'm going to put my microphone back on. Hopefully you caught what I said. To remove the slide, you just unscrew it completely, and then it comes right out. Now what we have is this right here is where this bolt, and let me show you the bolt on the bottom of that. It's an all thread, and it just basically goes straight down the middle. And it goes straight down the middle, which means it straddles those two screws, which means it's going to be entirely possible and completely doable to put two marks right here, drill two holes, and then you can adjust your compound slide merely by just moving the slide forward a little bit, and then loosening those bolts. And once those two Allen cap screws are loose, you can rotate in any direction without disassembling the entire slide. So there's our project for today. Alright, so we removed the tool holder. That's just basically the unscrewing that little handle there, and it comes right out. Now, in order to take this threaded shaft off, on this particular model, there's two 4mm Allen cap screws. So you put your wrench in and basically loosen that up and get these out. Now, what will probably happen, because we didn't disassemble any of this, is that I should be able to unscrew that all threaded rod completely and have this whole assembly just come right out. So, and having never torn this apart before, kind of doing it as I go along, but judging by the way it looks like it's put together, it should just be a matter of taking these cap screws out, dropping another one, and then your slide is no longer attached. And so I should, let's see if I move I guess that doesn't give me a whole lot of space, but yeah, I can get it out. So there you have it. This is the part we would need, and we need to drill these two holes. So the question is, how do we mark the holes? Well, the way you mark the holes is, we're going to have to take this assembly off, and that I have had off in the past, and it's the same two 4mm cap screws. And what we'll do is, this is also how you adjust this slide, the angle of the slide. If you can get to those two cap head screws, you should be able to move this anywhere and then lock them up again. And just to review, we're going to drill two holes here that should give us enough room to get right down in here. And if you put the Allen screw in, first thing you notice is that the Allen screw, the hole clears the dovetail, so it's not in the way at all. So it should be fine as far as being able to put your Allen head screw in and clearing the dovetail up here. Now what will happen though is, when you drill down, if there is any part of this dovetail in the bottom that is in the way, drilling down through this block is going to drill a little notch in there, and that's not going to affect anything as long as you deburr it. So we're going to go ahead and disassemble this. Now here's another piece of the puzzle that I am just not a fan of. When you take the compound slide completely off, off of the cross slide, there's a little disc down there, and invariably what happens is the disc sinks all the way down into the hole, and it's very hard because there's nothing that holds it up. It just drops down into that hole. So you really don't want to be taking these screws off any more than you have to. And for some reason, and I'm sure it was expense, but or you know, they didn't want to put in a thicker piece of metal here, because it just doesn't make sense that once that drops, these screws are no longer long enough to engage them. So what you have to do when you're tearing this apart, or actually when you're putting it back together, is you have to basically pull this little spacer up and keep it at an angle so that it doesn't fall. And it doesn't want to do that. It will fall 9 times out of 10, and you got to keep getting it up, because there's no way to get a tool underneath it to hold this thing up. So it's a real pain in the butt. One thing you can do is put a dab of grease on here, and that'll hold it up, and that'll help you to get it engaged. Thankfully, you only have to take this apart if you're going to take that compound slide off. So in the case what we're doing today, you have to do that, but normally you wouldn't have to. It's just a matter of loosening this up so that you can rotate and move your slide in any position that you want. So that's where we're at now. Alright, so next we need to, in order to take this off, what we need to do is we need to remove your cross slide. And once again, you have the same system. You've got 2 Allen head cap screws there. This time they're 5mm, and mine are in pretty tight, so I'm using a little trick here, which is pretty basic. It's a 1/4 inch socket. It's a 3/8 inch with a long drive extension, and that helps to multiply and give me leverage, but I like to call it a torque multiplier. Anyway, you take these 2 off, and then we're going to unscrew this, and this cross slide should come out. So this is the bottom of the cross slide that goes on here. And theoretically, I could have tried to measure this pattern here and transfer it onto our compound slide right there and use this as our pattern. But this was just as easy to get out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this over to here, use a transfer punch, and transfer, probably put a spacer under there, transfer these 2 holes to this, making sure that they're spaced perfectly, and then we'll drill this out, and then we'll reassemble everything, and that should give us the adjustability that we need without having to back off on the compound slide. Alright, before I drill it and mark it, I decided I'm going to take the tool post out. So they conveniently put a 9mm edge on the side. Today's not my day. I'm going to drop everything except for the video. I'm going to finish this video. So here we go. Pull that out, and there's your 9mm slot. I don't know if you can see that. That's how you take that out. Just so we don't lose this, this is the indexing on the factory tool post, and I looked and I noticed that there is a spring down there, but there's no other device holding it in, so that means it just lifts in place. It also means that when you're working on this, pieces can fall out, and we don't want that to happen. So there's the spring. And it looks like they took a regular spring and then just cut it short. So that noise in the background is the garbage man. There we go. So now we're going to mark this, and then we're going to drill it and deburr it. Any idea? I don't know why it keeps turning off. Anyway, this is the compound slide spacer, which I'm using as a spacer to space this off. Then I have this, which is a spacer to raise the little thing that we're going to use to mark the screw holes. And then what I did was I took a little micrometer and I went edge to edge and I marked it. The other thing you might want to do is put a little bit of a Sharpie mark on your surface, because when you hammer, it'll tend to move things around and you'll have to find it, and you want to make sure that you get this just right. So there's one hole marked, and now mark the other hole, and you're looking straight down the center, make sure they're still in the right place, and they appear to be. Let's just double check and see how we're doing here. Yep. So now we can remove all of this. And what you have is, you have two little marked areas where we're going to drill. And the size of the drill should be roughly equivalent to these holes here, because that's what they use in the factory. So we'll measure these holes and then get an appropriate drill bit and drill away. Alright, quick plug for Harbor Freight, and I get nothing from them. This was a transfer punch set that they had. I think it ran about $10. You know, a lot of people have a lot of beef with Harbor Freight. I don't. I think they make wonderful tools at a great price, and they've opened up a market that nobody else was filling. So go Harbor Freight. Alright, so here's our drill setup, and what we've done is we have the piece right here with our little center punch finder holes there. We're going to use a little drill here first, so that we can make sure that we get these accurately placed. Okay, so let's go ahead and pre-drill these just so that the drill has some place to follow. So let's go ahead and do that first. Now I could clamp this down, but I don't think that kind of accuracy is going to really be necessary. And this is a cast iron plate, so it drills pretty easily, and these are just to get the drill to go straight later on, and it has no problem finding the center punch hole. So just go down in there a little bit, and next we'll change it to the right drill size, and I believe the size that closest fits is 15/64, just slightly less than 1/4 of an inch. So we'll set that up right now. Alright, so now we've got it set up. The one thing you'll notice is it's not clamped in. I don't think that's going to be a problem. We've got the holes pre-drilled, and I put a little bit of oil on there, and again we're working with cast iron, which is relatively soft. So and you can see the chips in there are pretty fine. So, I'll be through in a second, but I'm going to go ahead and brush this off and put another dab of oil on there. But there are super fine chips. So let's drop another drop of oil. Going through really easily, but I'm putting light pressure on here. We are going to do that one more time. Remove the little bits and pieces and put another dab of oil on here. Kind of hard reaching all over the place, but that's the way it is. I think it's coming through right now. And I'm going to keep going in case the dovetail is in the way. I want to make sure I go all the way through. There we go. Let's brush that off, flip it over, and see what we got. Okay, so here we have the hole. And we went all the way through, and you can see that going straight through there, it cleared the dovetail. So let's just make sure, because it looks like it might hit, and it does. So we're going to go a little bit deeper through that dovetail. Because we're going in and the dovetail is an angle, you want to be very light with the pressure on the drill and let the drill do the cutting. And the reason being, and there's the dovetail, and you can see we've got a slight burr, we'll have to deburr that. Actually, there's no burr. But the reason being you want to go real light is because that angle right there, that ramp. The drill bit is coming down like this. It's going to hit the ramp, and the natural tendency is going to be for the drill to want to bend a little. So you want to come down real slowly and let that drill eat that angle up on its own, so that we don't have the deflection of the drill. We don't want to deflect that drill. So I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I don't think you need to watch. Rinse and repeat. Alright, so what do we have and what did we learn? Okay, we've got both holes drilled and they look like they're evenly spaced. And what we learned is this dovetail is a lot thicker than this one. So although we went through this dovetail slightly, we didn't have to go through this one at all. So I just had to, and actually this is almost burr free, but I'm just going to clean it up with a tiny little rat tail. Maybe do the same up here, and then it's good to go. We reassemble and see if it works. Alright, so this just required barely touching it with a rat tail file, and it came out clean. For these two, what I did was in order to bevel it, another shameless plug for Harbor Freight, these little 1/2-inch countersink with 1/4-inch shaft, 1/4-inch drive, those things are great. You can put them in your little drill driver and really quickly and deburr it. So that did most of the deburring. I'm going to come back with a little flat tail just to make sure. But you can see that they didn't even countersink this hole here for the indexing pin. So these should be fine. Alright, here's another tip. So remember how this falls down in the slide and you can't get that the little cap screws into it? So I came up with this idea, and basically you take a small piece of foam, which is what I have here, and we're just going to trace out and cut out the circle. And what that will do is it will space this up high enough that you can put the screws in without a problem, and then this little piece of foam will just slide over the top of the compound slide there. So that eliminates another issue that we were having. So just take a small piece of foam, put it underneath there, and that'll boost it up, and you can leave that foam in there. Alright, so now it's time for reassembly. And the first thing we're going to do is assemble the cross slide. So we're going to start by inserting the compound slide spacer, and we're going to put that in there and hold it with one finger. And then this goes right underneath. So this will go right underneath that foam spacer that we just added. And we're just going to tighten this up. And actually we can just slide this over now. Slide it over so the spacer is being held up. And now the spacer, that foam spacer, is wiping the surface of this, which probably isn't a bad idea. And then we're just going to screw this in, put the 2 cap screws in. So here's the tip. When you're putting this together, this is a left-handed thread. The cross slide is a left-handed thread. So what you want to do is make sure that you turn it left-handed to get it to thread into the cross slide nut down there. The other thing is that this all-thread rod is longer than the travel of your cross slide. So what you're going to end up with is you're going to have to push it in and then pull this over this way. Now once it engages, thread it in a little, bring the cross slide this way, then put these cap screws in. Because if you put the cap screws in once it first starts threading in, you're never going to be able to pull these together because it's too far extended. They give you a little bit too much all thread right there. So if you were to do something like that, you'd probably snap these little ears off. So to prevent that from happening, you thread the cross slide over and get it closer to you, and then that way this will completely compress. And you can see that our little foam piece is perfect because it's now got this up and it's supported. Alright, so next up is this piece, and the threads are vertical, so we'll go vertical. By vertical I mean this way. So we'll put this on like this, and it goes right over that post, goes right in the center hole like that, and then it fits perfectly. Now we're going to take these 2 cap screws and drop them in here and tighten those up and get them relatively snug, and then we'll put the cross slide or the compound slide on top. Alright, so this is still loose, and now we're going to put in the compound slide all threaded rod. I don't know what this called this, but this is not left-handed. This one's a right-handed thread. So we'll get that started, and then remember this cap bolts to the actual compound slide. So we're going to take our spacer, which goes on this side, and it goes on this side because that's where the adjustments are, and we're going to slide this on like that, and I think we can even get it in from here, but I like putting it in from the other side. It's a lot easier, so let's go ahead and do that. Put that in there, and then make sure that the adjustment screws are on the correct side, and that this bevel, because you can put this bevel in two ways, so there the adjustment screws are on this side and the bevel goes this way, but if you were to flip it up that, the bevel goes this way. So make sure you mark the bevel so you get it in on the appropriate side, and in this case it's the bevel going that way. So we'll slide this right in between the two, get it in there all the way. There you can see it. And then what we're going to do is we are going to put these two cap screws in. So let's go ahead and mate those, and then we'll put those cap screws in. Alright, so there's one more modification you need to make. The compound slide, the little spacer here, the bottom end of it is right in this groove, so you'll have to notch out just a little shallow piece right there, and it shouldn't affect anything. You can do that with a bench grinder or just a rat tail file. And then once you get this into position, because this should not shift at all, you should be able to get it into position and put your Allen head screw there. What I foresee happening though is if you don't have these adjusted right, then this thing here can drift a little bit, and when it drifts you're going to end up with a situation where you're not going to be able to get your Allen head screw back in there. So that's just something else you'll have to watch for when you're doing the adjustment. These should keep this stationary, and if that is the case, then this should always be lined up with the Allen head screw, so it should be fine. Alright, so basically once you have this spacer in place, all you have to do is mark it by sticking something sharp in there and marking the area. But I kind of went overboard here. I filed it a lot more than you'd need to. You just need to file like a half round. So let's put it together. Alright, so I hate on the internet when everything's this amazing trick. You know, it's just annoying that everything is so amazing and everything's a trick. But I'm going to show you an amazing trick. So this compound slide, the problem most people have is that you have to basically remove it all the way in order to get your tool in to adjust the angle. Here's the amazing trick. Do you see those two holes? Those two holes, coupled with a little notch in the spacer for the compound slide, are all you need to be able to adjust your compound slide angle. And once you make those little holes, all you have to do is bring your compound slide right over here to the center, because that's where this is held on. This pivot is held on in the center. So you bring your compound slide over to the center, then with those two little holes drilled, you can then have access to the screws that are underneath. And once you do, you engage. You can loosen that one. You can take your tool post, move it over, engage this one, loosen them up, adjust your compound slide, and you're done. That's an amazing trick. So watch the video and I'll show you the rest. I'll show you how I did it basically. Thanks.